Life with Sarah had always been a comfortable hum, a melody of shared routines and quiet understanding. We built our world in a charming house nestled in Maplewood, New Jersey, a suburban haven where the biggest worry was usually whose turn it was to mow the lawn. I was Michael, a man who believed wholeheartedly in the simple, profound joy of a stable marriage, and Sarah, my wife, was the cornerstone of that belief. She was bright, ambitious, and had recently landed a significant promotion at a marketing firm downtown. It was a big step up, a testament to her hard work and undeniable talent, and my pride in her was boundless. Her new boss, a charismatic man named David, seemed to be the driving force behind her new role. Sarah spoke of him with a mixture of admiration and a slight, almost imperceptible awe. The promotion meant longer hours, more demanding projects, and a level of dedication that often kept her at the office well past sunset. I understood, or at least I told myself I did. Career success, especially for someone as driven as Sarah, often demanded sacrifice. I'd often find myself alone in our quiet house, the silence amplifying the absence of her familiar presence. A pang of loneliness would sometimes prick at me, but I'd quickly dismiss it, reminding myself that her dedication was ultimately for our shared future, for the life we were building together. Yet, as the weeks bled into months, that quiet hum of comfort began to falter, replaced by a subtle, almost imperceptible discord. Sarah's late nights became the norm, not the exception. She'd often return after midnight, her explanations concise and professional, always revolving around critical presentations, urgent client meetings, or complex strategy sessions with David. I'd be asleep when she arrived, waking briefly to the faint click of the lock, the soft rustle of her movements as she prepared for bed. In the mornings, she'd be up early, her phone already clutched in her hand, a constant appendage. It was always with her, even accompanying her into the bathroom, its faint glow visible under the door as she showered. I noticed these things, of course, but pushed them aside, attributing them to the demands of her high-pressure job, the digital tether that modern careers often required. One particular evening stands out with chilling clarity. The house was steeped in the twilight quiet. The scent of the dinner I'd prepared long since faded. I had waited, as I often did, for Sarah to return, hoping for a shared meal, a moment of connection. But then her call came, the familiar ring echoing in the stillness. Her voice, slightly strained but resolute, informed me she'd be home late again. "Working on a big presentation," she'd explained. "David and I need to finalize the pitch deck tonight." My heart sank a little, the familiar disappointment washing over me. Another evening alone. Boredom, a creeping companion of my solitary evenings, eventually led me to an old, neglected corner of the internet. I decided to browse my old social media accounts, a nostalgic trip down memory lane, perhaps to reconnect with forgotten friends. I scrolled through old posts, smiled at blurry photos from years past, and felt a fleeting sense of comfort in the familiar digital echoes of my youth. Then a suggested profile popped up, an algorithm's random offering, or so I thought. My breath hitched. It was Sarah. My Sarah. The profile wasn't active, not recently updated, but it was undeniably hers. Her picture, a vibrant smiling headshot I recognized from an earlier time, stared back at me. Her name, her age, her details, all laid bare. And then, the words that shattered the comfortable hum of my life into a million sharp fragments. Single, and looking for something new. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A cold, nauseating dread bloomed in the pit of my stomach. spreading rapidly through my veins until my limbs felt heavy and lifeless. My mind reeled, grasping for an explanation, any explanation. A prank? An old, forgotten profile from before we met? But the details, the clarity of the image, the specificity of the language, all screamed otherwise. Looking for something new. The words echoed in my head, a cruel, mocking refrain. Disbelief warred with a sudden, overwhelming wave of betrayal. The trust I had so freely given, the foundation of our entire relationship, crumbled in an instant. This wasn't just a late night at work. This wasn't just a demanding boss. This was a lie, a deception woven into the very fabric of our shared life. The image of her, smiling from that profile, juxtaposed with her calls about presentations, and David, created a chasm of doubt so profound it felt like a physical wound. My wife, my Sarah, the woman I had built my life with, was listed as single, actively seeking something new, while I sat at home, waiting for her, trusting her implicitly. The quiet hum of our life had not just faltered, it had been brutally silenced, replaced by the deafening roar of a trust irrevocably broken. Our story began, not with a deceptive dating profile, but with the innocent optimism of youth, a time when our lives were just beginning to intertwine. I met Sarah during freshman orientation at Rutgers University, a whirlwind of new faces and nervous energy. She was immediately captivating, with a laugh that could light up a room and an intellect that sparked endless conversations. We bonded over shared dreams of making a mark on the world, late-night study sessions, fueled by cheap coffee, and the bewildering adventure of navigating college life. Our early romance was a tender thing, nurtured by long walks across campus and whispered promises under starlit skies. We were inseparable, two halves of a whole, convinced that our connection was destined for something extraordinary. After graduation, we took the plunge, moving into our first apartment together in Hoboken. It was small, a cramped space with peeling paint and a perpetually leaky faucet, but it felt like a palace to us. We furnished it with hand-me-downs and thrift store finds, each piece telling a story of our budding life together. We were broke, often living paycheck to paycheck, but our spirits were rich with hope and the unwavering belief that we could conquer anything as long as we had each other. Those early struggles forged a deep bond, a testament to our resilience and shared commitment. We learned to lean on each other, to celebrate small victories, and to find joy in the simplest of things, like a home-cooked meal after a long day or a quiet evening spent reading side by side. Our wedding day, a few years later, was a reflection of our journey, modest, heartfelt, and brimming with genuine emotion. We chose a local botanical garden, a place of natural beauty that spoke to the organic growth of our love. Surrounded by our closest family and friends, we exchanged vows that felt not like obligations, but like reaffirmations of a truth we already knew deep in our hearts. We spoke often of having children, of building a family, picturing a future filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet in our home. It was a dream we both cherished, a cornerstone of our shared vision for the years ahead. Throughout our relationship, Sarah had always been a diligent worker. Her previous jobs, while not as high profile as her current one, were always approached with the same dedication. She worked hard, yes, but rarely did her work spill over into the late hours, certainly not to the extent it had recently. I had complete, unequivocal trust in her, a trust that had been built brick by brick over years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and transparent honesty. There was never a moment, not a single flicker of doubt, that she would betray that trust. Our foundation felt unshakable, cemented by countless moments of intimacy, shared laughter, and quiet understanding. I remembered one summer evening, a few years into our marriage, when a sudden thunderstorm had knocked out the power. Instead of panicking, we lit candles, pulled out a deck of cards, and spent hours playing silly games, laughing until our sides hurt. Or the time she nursed me back to health after a nasty flu, her presence a comforting balm against the aches and chills. These weren't grand gestures, but small, everyday acts of love and devotion that solidified my belief in our unbreakable bond. I saw her as my partner, my confidant, my best friend, and the woman with whom I would grow old. Perhaps I was a little naive. I always saw the best in Sarah, choosing to believe in her goodness, her integrity, her unwavering loyalty. Our life together had settled into a stable, predictable routine, a comfortable rhythm that made me feel secure and cherished. We had our rituals: Sunday morning coffee on the porch, Friday night movie dates, annual vacations to our favorite beach town. These routines, far from being mundane, were the comforting threads that wove the tapestry of our shared existence. They were the silent promises of continuity, of a future unfolding exactly as we had planned. I never questioned her loyalty, not once. Not even when she occasionally flirted harmlessly with a waiter, or laughed a little too loudly at a colleague's joke. It was just Sarah being Sarah, her natural charm, her vibrant personality shining through. I had always admired her ability to connect with people, to draw them in with her warmth and wit. I never saw it as a threat, only as another facet of the woman I adored. Until now. The dating profile, stark and undeniable, had ripped through that carefully constructed reality, exposing a raw, festering wound of doubt. It wasn't just a deviation from our routine. It was a fundamental shattering of the very essence of our relationship. The woman who had sworn to be mine, who had shared every dream and whispered every secret, was now revealed to be someone else entirely, someone who had been living a secret life, actively seeking something new, while I remained blissfully unaware, steeped in the comfort of our shared past. The foundation I thought was so strong had suddenly crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me adrift in a sea of questions, each one more agonizing than the last. The memories of our innocent beginnings, our shared struggles, and our unwavering trust now felt tainted, viewed through the bitter lens of betrayal. Sarah's career progression had been impressive, a slow but steady climb that culminated in her big promotion at Innovate Marketing, a prestigious firm nestled in the bustling heart of Manhattan. I remembered her initial excitement, a vibrant energy that was almost contagious. She'd spent weeks poring over fashion magazines, investing in a new wardrobe of sharp suits and elegant dresses, a physical manifestation of her newfound professional status. The long commutes, an hour each way on the train, didn't seem to deter her. She'd often use the time to read industry reports or catch up on emails, always striving to be one step ahead. It was during this period that David, her new boss, entered our lives, albeit indirectly at first. Sarah would often mention him, painting a picture of a man who was undeniably driven, sometimes demanding, but ultimately fair. She spoke of his sharp intellect, his innovative ideas, and his ability to inspire his team. I listened, always supportive, proud that she was working with someone she admired, someone who could push her to new heights. Her workload grew exponentially. Frequent business dinners, late-night client calls, and conferences in distant cities became the new normal. Yet, amidst all this professional growth, I also noticed a subtle transformation in Sarah herself. She seemed to radiate a new kind of confidence, a spark in her eyes that was both captivating and, at times, a little unsettling. She started going to the gym more regularly, her dedication to fitness intensifying. New clothes, always stylish and often expensive, began appearing in her closet. Her hair, always meticulously cared for, seemed to have an extra bounce, a more polished sheen after her frequent salon visits. Initially, I interpreted these changes as positive, signs of her self-improvement, a natural evolution that came with her success. I found her renewed vitality attractive, a vibrant energy that added another layer to the woman I loved. I tried my best to be supportive, to lighten her load at home. I'd take on more of the cooking, ensuring there was always a hot meal waiting for her, no matter how late she arrived. I'd tackle the laundry, the grocery shopping, and the myriad other chores that kept our household running smoothly, hoping to free up her time and alleviate her stress. I believed I was being the supportive husband, the steadfast partner who stood by his wife as she chased her dreams. Her explanations for the late nights, when they came, were always plausible, always professional. Client pitches that required all-hands-on-deck collaboration, strategy sessions that stretched into the early hours, team-building events that fostered camaraderie. I accepted them without question, my trust in her absolute. But beneath the surface of my understanding, a small, insidious feeling of neglect began to brew. I pushed it down, dismissing it as selfish, reminding myself of the sacrifices she was making for our future. Then came the small, almost imperceptible cracks in our routine, the moments that, in hindsight, served as harbingers of the storm to come. I remembered our anniversary dinner. I had made reservations at our favorite Italian restaurant, bought her a thoughtful gift, and eagerly awaited our special evening. But a few hours before, her call came, filled with apologies and genuine-sounding regret. "Urgent deadline, Michael. David needs me to finalize the presentation tonight. I'm so sorry." The disappointment was a bitter pill, but I swallowed it, telling myself that work sometimes intruded, that our love was strong enough to withstand such minor setbacks. A few weeks later, a small argument erupted, the first truly heated exchange we'd had in a long time. I had gently expressed my concern about her working too much, about the toll it was taking on her, and, implicitly, on us. Her reaction was sharp, defensive. "You're not supporting my career, Michael," she had retorted, her voice edged with frustration. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the opportunities I have." I retreated, stung, feeling unfairly accused, but also guilty for what I perceived as my own lack of understanding. The distance between us, subtle at first, began to widen, a quiet canyon forming in the space where our intimacy used to reside. I noticed how her conversations became increasingly centered around work, around David, around the exciting new world she inhabited in Manhattan. When I tried to share details of my day, my own concerns or triumphs, her attention often seemed to wander, her eyes darting to her phone, as if anticipating a more important message. I started feeling left out, a spectator to her new, exciting professional life, a life that seemed to have less and less room for me. The vibrant spark I had once found attractive now seemed to emanate from a place I couldn't reach, a world from which I felt increasingly excluded. The man who once relished her growing confidence now found himself questioning its source, wondering if it was solely derived from her professional achievements, or if something else, something more personal, was fueling this transformation. The subtle changes in her appearance, the new clothes, the perfectly coiffed hair, began to feel less like self-improvement and more like preparation for an audience I wasn't a part of. The cheerful explanations for her late nights, once accepted at face value, now carried a faint, unsettling echo of repetition, a rehearsed quality that grated on my nerves. The increasing workload, the frequent business dinners, the conferences, they weren't just professional obligations anymore. They were barriers, slowly but surely erecting themselves between us, obscuring the view of the woman I thought I knew. I saw less of her, and when I did, she often seemed preoccupied, her mind still buzzing with the day's demands or already anticipating the next. Our quiet evenings, once filled with shared stories and comfortable silences, dwindled, replaced by my solitary vigil and her late, hushed arrivals. I yearned for the intimacy we once shared, the easy banter, the knowing glances, the simple pleasure of her undivided attention. But those moments became rarer, fleeting glimpses of a past that seemed to recede further with each passing week. The man who once felt like Sarah's unwavering support now felt like an appendage, a background character in the unfolding drama of her ambitious new life. The subtle distance, once a barely perceptible tremor, had grown into a palpable chasm, leaving me adrift, watching her sail further and further away, leaving me stranded on the shores of our once shared dreams. I was no longer just feeling neglected. I was starting to feel utterly disconnected, a stranger in my own marriage, watching my wife transform into someone I barely recognized. And the discovery of that dating profile, single and looking for something new, was not just a betrayal. It was the brutal confirmation of a growing, unspoken fear that had been festering in the quiet corners of my mind. The dating profile, stark and undeniable, had ripped through that carefully constructed reality, exposing a raw, festering wound of doubt. It wasn't just a deviation from our routine. It was a fundamental shattering of the very essence of our relationship. The woman who had sworn to be mine, who had shared every dream and whispered every secret, was now revealed to be someone else entirely, someone who had been living a secret life, actively seeking something new, while I remained blissfully unaware, steeped in the comfort of our shared past. The foundation I thought was so strong had suddenly crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me adrift in a sea of questions, each one more agonizing than the last. The memories of our innocent beginnings, our shared struggles, and our unwavering trust now felt tainted, viewed through the bitter lens of betrayal. The discovery of Sarah's dating profile plunged me into an immediate, suffocating aftermath. Sleep became an impossible luxury. Each attempt to close my eyes met with a relentless reel of recent interactions, playing out like a horrifying premonition. Every casual touch, every hurried kiss, every late-night arrival was re-examined, dissected, and reinterpreted through the lens of this new, brutal information. My mind raced, trapped in a relentless loop of what-ifs and how could I have been so blind? The initial shock gave way to a cold, burning anger, quickly followed by a paralyzing fear of the unknown. My internal struggle was a brutal tug-of-war. Should I confront her immediately, unleash the torrent of pain and accusation that threatened to overwhelm me? Or should I gather more information, seeking irrefutable proof before shattering our world irrevocably? I chose the latter, a decision born not of cowardice, but of a desperate need for clarity. I couldn't risk accusing her based solely on an old, potentially inactive profile. I needed concrete evidence, something that would leave no room for doubt or denial. So, I began my discreet investigation, a clandestine operation within the walls of my own home, a place that once felt like a sanctuary, but now felt like a stage for an unfolding tragedy. My first target was her phone bill. I accessed our shared online account, my fingers trembling, as I scrolled through pages of call logs and data usage. I was looking for unusual numbers, excessive calls to an unknown contact, anything that stood out in the predictable pattern of our communication. There were a few unfamiliar numbers, mostly business lines or conference call services, but nothing immediately damning, nothing that screamed affair. Yet the very act of scrutinizing her private communications felt sordid, a violation of the trust I was trying to preserve, even as it crumbled around me. Next, I turned my attention to her car. I checked the odometer, comparing the mileage to her reported commute, trying to reconcile the numbers. It was a futile exercise, as her work often involved client visits and travel, making it difficult to pinpoint any significant discrepancies. But I noticed other details, small things that, when viewed through the lens of suspicion, took on a sinister new meaning. A new perfume, a scent I didn't recognize, lingered faintly in the car's interior. A small, delicate silver bracelet on her wrist, one I hadn't seen before, she claimed was a thank you gift from a grateful client. Each detail was a tiny prick, adding to the growing paranoia and suspicion that now consumed my every waking moment. The paranoia was a suffocating blanket, wrapping itself around me, distorting my perception of reality. Every glance, every casual remark, every innocent gesture was now filtered through a dark, cynical lens. I found myself scrutinizing her face for telltale signs, searching for guilt in her eyes, a flicker of deception in her smile. The woman I loved was slowly transforming into a stranger, a puzzle I was desperately trying to solve. But every piece seemed to lead to a more painful conclusion. I remembered a particular night, just last week, when Sarah had come home exceptionally late, well past midnight. She'd slipped into bed quietly, her movements unusually tentative. As she settled beside me, I caught a faint, unfamiliar scent, a distinct, masculine cologne, clinging to her clothes, subtly mixing with her own perfume. My heart had hammered against my ribs, a silent alarm screaming in my chest. I wanted to shake her awake, to demand an explanation, but the words caught in my throat, choked by fear and the desperate hope that I was wrong. The next morning, I tried to confront her subtly, using the guise of concern. "Rough night, honey. You seemed really tired when you came in." I watched her closely, trying to gauge her reaction, searching for any sign of discomfort or evasion. Her responses, once open and direct, had become vague, evasive, almost defensive. "Just a long meeting, Michael." David pushed us hard to finalize the Q3 projections. The name David now felt like a shard of glass in my ear. Every mention of him a fresh wound. There was a specific argument, not long after, when I tried again to express my feelings of neglect, my growing sense of isolation. I chose my words carefully, trying to convey my hurt without accusation. "I just feel like we're drifting apart, Sarah. I miss you. I miss us." Her reaction was immediate and sharp. She accused me of being unsupportive, of trying to hold her back, of not understanding the demands of her new, high-pressure job. Her anger felt disproportionate, a defensive shield against an unspoken truth. The argument ended with her retreating to her office, slamming the door, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of doubt. The emotional toll was immense. I was constantly on edge, my nerves frayed, my mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Joy, once a constant companion, had been replaced by a gnawing anxiety. Laughter felt forced, conversations strained. I found myself withdrawing, unable to share my turmoil with anyone, trapped in a self-imposed prison of suspicion. My appetite waned, sleep became a distant memory, and the vibrant colors of life seemed to dim, replaced by a monotonous grayscale. I noticed her becoming more secretive with her phone, a device that had once been left carelessly on the counter, now always within arm's reach, often face down. She started taking calls in other rooms, her voice hushed, her body language subtly guarded. If I entered the room unexpectedly, she would often end the call abruptly, offering a hurried, unconvincing explanation. Each instance was a fresh stab, confirming my deepest fears, confirming the growing chasm between us. The weight of this doubt was crushing, a physical burden that pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The feeling of being betrayed, of having my trust systematically eroded, was a relentless ache that resonated deep within my soul. I was no longer just suspicious, I was convinced. But conviction, however strong, was not enough. I needed concrete proof, undeniable evidence, before I could make any accusations, before I could confront the woman I had loved for so long and irrevocably shatter the fragile remnants of our life together. The hunt for truth had become my sole obsession, a desperate quest to unearth the undeniable reality, no matter how devastating it might be. The need for concrete proof gnawed at me, a relentless itch that demanded to be scratched. I had to confirm my suspicions, to transform the agonizing doubts into undeniable facts. Then I remembered Sarah mentioning a work retreat for the upcoming weekend. She had casually dropped it into conversation a few days prior, a fleeting comment about a team-building exercise at a hotel in Atlantic City. The words, once dismissed as mundane work talk, now echoed with a sinister resonance. A work retreat with David. My heart dropped, a cold dread washing over me. This was it. This was my chance. A desperate urge, primal and overwhelming, compelled me to follow her. I had to see it with my own eyes, to witness the truth, no matter how painful. I spent the next few days planning, meticulously creating an alibi. I called my closest friends, Mark and Lisa, and concocted a story about visiting my ailing aunt in upstate New York. They bought it, offering their sympathies and wishing me a safe trip. The lies felt heavy on my tongue. But the alternative, living in this tortured limbo, was far worse. Late Friday afternoon, as Sarah prepared to leave for her retreat, I quietly packed a small duffel bag, a few changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my phone, and a portable charger. I moved with a strange, detached efficiency, my emotions numb, replaced by a laser-like focus on the mission ahead. I watched her drive away, her car disappearing down the street, and then, with a heavy sigh, I started my own engine. The drive to Atlantic City was a blur of highway lights and internal monologue, my mind replaying every suspicious interaction, every fleeting glance, every hushed phone call. I arrived late Friday night, the neon glow of the casinos, a garish welcome against the dark sky. To avoid any chance of detection, I checked into a different hotel, a smaller, less conspicuous establishment a few blocks away from the sprawling conference center where Sarah was supposedly staying. The anonymity of the place offered a strange comfort, a temporary refuge from the storm brewing within me. Sleep was impossible that night, my mind buzzing with anticipation and dread. I lay awake, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, counting the minutes until dawn. Saturday morning arrived, gray and overcast, mirroring the landscape of my soul. After a quick, tasteless breakfast, I made my way to the conference hotel. I spent the morning discreetly observing the lobby, a bustling hub of business travelers and weekend tourists. I positioned myself near a potted palm, pretending to read a newspaper, my eyes scanning every face, every group. The anxiety was a tight knot in my stomach, twisting with every passing minute. Then I saw them, Sarah and David. They emerged from one of the elevators, not in business attire, but dressed casually, comfortably, like a couple on a weekend getaway. Sarah wore a light summer dress, David a polo shirt and khakis. They were laughing, a sound that pierced through my carefully constructed emotional armor. It wasn't a professional chuckle, but a genuine, intimate laugh, the kind I rarely heard from her anymore. They weren't just colleagues, their body language spoke volumes, a silent language of shared comfort and ease. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, as David gently placed a hand on the small of her back as they navigated the crowded lobby. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I followed them from a distance, maintaining a safe gap, my movements practiced and cautious. They left the hotel, not heading towards a conference room, but towards the boardwalk, their steps light and unhurried. The sight of them together, so relaxed, so natural, was a punch to the gut. The air seemed to thicken around me, every sound amplified, every color sharpened, as if my senses were on high alert, preparing for impact. I watched, hidden amongst the throngs of tourists, as they strolled along the iconic boardwalk. They stopped at a small ice cream parlor, their heads close together as they debated flavors. I saw David playfully smudge a dab of ice cream on Sarah's nose, and she responded with a light slap on his arm, her smile radiant. My world began to tilt, the carefully constructed facade of our marriage crumbling into dust. Then, as they continued their walk, David reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. They held hands openly, unashamedly, like a couple deeply in love. The sight was a physical blow, a searing pain that radiated through my chest. As evening approached, they entered a small, upscale restaurant, its windows offering a tantalizing glimpse of the intimate setting within. I found a bench across the street, partially obscured by a bus stop, and watched them through the glass. They sat opposite each other, leaning in, their conversation animated, their eyes locked. It was a date, plain and simple, a romantic dinner for two, devoid of any professional pretense. The food, the wine, the soft lighting, it was all designed for intimacy, for connection, for everything I thought we still had. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the restaurant, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. They paused just outside the entrance, their figures silhouetted against the vibrant backdrop of the city. David gently reached out, cupping Sarah's face in his hands. He leaned in, and then he kissed her. It was a clear, unmistakable kiss, a lingering embrace that left no room for doubt, no space for interpretation. It wasn't a quick peck or a friendly brush of lips. It was a kiss of passion, of affection, of deep, intimate connection. In that moment, my world imploded. The immediate, overwhelming pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a cold, searing agony that ripped through me, tearing apart every fiber of my being. The air left my lungs, and I felt a dizzying sensation, as if the ground beneath me had vanished. My mind screamed in protest, but my eyes refused to turn away, forcing me to witness the brutal reality. My wife, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted implicitly, was betraying me, openly, shamelessly, with her boss. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with shock and despair. I raised it, the lens shaking violently, and snapped a picture. It was blurry, imperfect, but it captured the undeniable truth. Sarah and David, locked in an embrace, their lips intertwined. The image, once captured, felt like a burning brand in my hand, a tangible piece of proof that would forever haunt my memories. I turned and walked away, numb, the reality hitting me like a physical blow, a relentless wave crashing over me again and again. Each step was an effort, my legs heavy, my mind a chaotic mess of shattered dreams and broken trust. The image of them together, their intertwined hands, their intimate laughter, and that devastating kiss was burned into my mind, an indelible scar. I drove home in a daze, the miles blurring into an endless tunnel. The vibrant lights of Atlantic City, once a symbol of excitement and escape, now felt like a mocking backdrop to my personal tragedy. The journey was a silent scream, a desperate attempt to outrun the pain, but it clung to me, a suffocating cloak of despair. My heart was a hollow ache, my soul ravaged by the brutal truth. My marriage, my future, my entire world had just collapsed, and the photograph in my phone was the irrefutable evidence of its destruction. I returned home, a ghost in my own house, the driving haze having offered little respite from the searing pain. The image of Sarah and David, locked in that undeniable kiss, was tattooed behind my eyelids, a constant, flickering horror. My body felt heavy, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions. But beneath the devastation, a cold, hard resolve began to crystallize. I was broken, yes, but I was not defeated. I would not let this betrayal define me, nor would I allow it to simply fade into obscurity. Sarah and David had chosen to play a dangerous game, and now I would ensure they faced the consequences. I knew I couldn't confront Sarah immediately. The wound was too fresh, the anger too raw. Any confrontation now would be a chaotic explosion of emotion, yielding little more than tears and futile denials. I needed a plan, a strategy. I needed to move with precision, with calculated intent, to achieve not just revenge, but justice. My first call was to Mark. Mark wasn't just a friend. He was a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer, specializing in family law. I knew I could trust him implicitly, and his professional guidance would be invaluable. My voice was tight, strained as I recounted the entire sordid tale, from the discovery of the dating profile to the sickening scene on the Atlantic City boardwalk. I emailed him the picture, the irrefutable evidence of Sarah's infidelity, my hand shaking as I attached the file. Mark listened patiently, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a somber gravity. He didn't offer platitudes or empty sympathies. Instead, he offered concrete advice, outlining the steps for divorce proceedings and emphasizing the critical importance of gathering more evidence. He spoke of financial disclosures, asset division, and the need to protect myself legally. His words, though chilling in their practicality, grounded me, shifting my focus from raw emotion to strategic action. Armed with Mark's counsel, I began my meticulous, clandestine operation. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. Every corner, a potential hiding place for secrets. Every interaction, a delicate dance of deception. I started discreetly collecting all our shared financial documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, mortgage papers. I photographed everything, creating digital copies, a fortress of information that would serve as my shield and my weapon. I even scoured old photo albums, looking for pictures of Sarah and me, searching for dates, for context, for anything that might prove useful in establishing the timeline of our relationship, and by extension, the timeline of her betrayal. The thought of revealing the truth to David's wife sparked a grim satisfaction within me. If Sarah and David had chosen to destroy my life, then they, too, deserved to face the fallout of their actions. I wanted David's pristine family life to crumble just as mine had. I wanted his hypocrisy exposed, his carefully constructed reputation shattered. This wasn't just about my pain. It was about holding them accountable for the wreckage they had caused. An online search, fueled by a cold, relentless determination, led me to David's social media profiles. It wasn't hard to find. His company website linked directly to his LinkedIn, and from there, a few clicks led me to his Facebook and Instagram. There it was, laid bare for the world to see. David, the devoted family man. Pictures of him with his wife, Emily, and their 2 young children, smiling, laughing, living what appeared to be an idyllic suburban life in Ramsey, New Jersey. The hypocrisy was sickening, a bitter taste in my mouth. He was a professional, a husband, a father, a man who had everything, yet still chose to risk it all for a fleeting, sordid affair. Finding Emily's profile was equally straightforward. Her name was tagged in countless family photos with David. I took a deep breath, my finger hovering over the message icon. This was the point of no return, the moment I would unleash the truth, not just on Sarah and David, but on an innocent party who deserved to know. I crafted a short, anonymous message, devoid of emotion, purely factual. I regret to inform you that your husband, David, is having an affair with Sarah, a colleague from his work. Attached is photographic proof. I attached the blurry but undeniable picture of them kissing, a silent testament to their deceit. I pressed send, a surge of adrenaline mixed with a strange, hollow triumph washing over me. The secret was no longer theirs alone. The dominoes had begun to fall. With this grim act of revelation, a sense of cold, calculated control began to replace the suffocating pain. My grief hadn't vanished, but it was now channeled, focused, weaponized. I was no longer a passive victim. I was an active participant in dismantling the wreckage. I started subtly separating our finances. I opened a new bank account in my name only, transferring a portion of my personal savings, ensuring I had a financial cushion for the impending storm. I reviewed our joint accounts, noting every significant transaction, preparing for the inevitable division of assets. The house, once filled with shared memories, now felt like a temporary residence. I began packing some of my essential belongings, not openly, but discreetly. Boxes of books, personal mementos, clothing. I gathered them quietly, stashing them in the spare bedroom closet, covered by old sheets, out of sight, out of mind for now. Each item I packed was a small act of detachment, a step towards a new, independent future. It was a methodical disengagement, a silent declaration of my intent to move on, to sever the ties that had bound me to a lie. A grim satisfaction settled over me, a dark counterpoint to the profound sadness that still lingered. Knowing that Sarah and David's secret affair would no longer be a secret, that the comfortable illusion they had built would soon shatter, offered a perverse sense of justice. They had sown the wind, and now they would reap the whirlwind. My pain remained, a constant companion, but it was now laced with a steely resolve, a quiet determination to reclaim my life, to rebuild it from the ashes of their betrayal, and to ensure that their actions did not go unpunished. The stage was set. The final confrontation was imminent. Sarah returned home from her retreat with a forced cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. She walked through the door, humming a tune I vaguely recognized, and immediately started recounting trivial details of her weekend, acting as if nothing had happened, as if our world hadn't just been irrevocably shattered. I watched her, a strange calmness settling over me. My emotions were a tangled mess beneath the surface, but outwardly I maintained a facade of almost detached composure. This wasn't the time for an emotional outburst. This was the time for precision, for clarity, for the final, devastating reveal. While she unpacked, chattering about challenging workshops and great networking opportunities, I moved with deliberate slowness. I set up a small, discreet camera in the living room, positioning it carefully on a bookshelf, blending it seamlessly with the decor. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible device, but it would capture every word, every reaction, every truth, and every lie. I wanted an undeniable record, not just for myself, but for any future legal proceedings. I prepared dinner, a simple meal, my hands moving mechanically through the familiar motions. The smell of cooking food filled the house, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension that permeated the air, at least for me. Sarah joined me in the kitchen, offering to help, her smiles feeling brittle, her laughter empty. We ate in a silence punctuated by her attempts at conversation, her questions about my weekend, all of which I answered vaguely, truthfully, but without detail. The food tasted like ash in my mouth, but I forced myself to eat to maintain the illusion of normalcy until the moment was right. After dinner, as the last remnants of daylight faded, I suggested we sit down in the living room. Sarah, oblivious to the storm brewing, settled onto the sofa, scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath, the air feeling heavy in my lungs, and then I spoke, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. "So, how was your weekend, really, Sarah?" I asked, looking directly into her eyes. I wanted to give her one last chance, a final opportunity to confess, to spare us both the brutal confrontation that was about to unfold. She looked up from her phone, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "I told you, Michael, it was good, productive, a lot of team building. We had some great presentations." Her voice was dismissive, her gaze already drifting back to her screen. She rattled off a few more vague answers, a string of corporate jargon and shallow pleasantries, never once mentioning David, never once hinting at the truth. My heart, already broken, sank further with each empty word. "Right," I said, my voice still level, though I could feel a tremor starting in my hands. "Presentations. Team building." I paused, letting the words hang in the air for a moment. Then, with a deliberate motion, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone and placed it on the coffee table between us, screen up. The first image that flashed into view was her dating profile, the one I had found weeks ago, the one listing her as single and looking for something new. Sarah's eyes widened, her casual demeanor instantly evaporating. Her face, which had been a picture of relaxed indifference just moments before, transformed. First, confusion, a furrowing of her brow as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Then, a dawning horror, as recognition set in. Her cheeks flushed, a deep crimson spreading across her neck. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The phone clattered to the floor, forgotten. I watched her, my gaze unwavering, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I didn't say a word, allowing the image to speak for itself, allowing the weight of her deceit to settle upon her. The silence in the room was deafening, thick with unspoken accusations and crumbling trust. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I swiped to the next image on my phone. The picture of her and David, locked in that unmistakable kiss outside the restaurant in Atlantic City. The flash of the camera had captured every detail, every nuance of their betrayal. Her breath hitched, the color drained from her face, leaving it ashen. Her eyes, wide and panicked, darted from the phone to me, then back to the phone, as if hoping the image would disappear. "No," she whispered, a barely audible sound. "Michael, I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, my voice still dangerously calm, masking the volcanic rage churning beneath. "Can you explain this, Sarah? Can you explain why my wife, who is supposedly married to me, has an active dating profile? Can you explain this picture? This team-building exercise?" My words were clipped, each one a hammer blow. She tried to deny it, to make excuses, her voice rising in a desperate, frantic pitch. "It's not what it looks like. That profile is old, Michael, I swear. And the picture, it was just a moment, a mistake. He was just comforting me. We had too much to drink." Her words tumbled out, a cascade of transparent lies, each one more pathetic than the last. I cut her off, my patience finally snapping. "Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah. Don't you dare stand there and lie to my face again." My voice rose slightly, the tremor in my hands becoming more pronounced. "I followed you. I saw you. I watched you and David holding hands, laughing, having dinner, and then I watched him kiss you. A very passionate kiss, I might add. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't comforting. This was an affair." I stood up, pacing a small circle in front of her, my gaze fixed on her trembling form. "The late nights, the vague excuses, the emotional distance, the constant secrecy with your phone, the cologne I smelled on you that night you came home after midnight. It all makes sense now, doesn't it?" My voice was laced with a bitterness I hadn't known I possessed. "You lied to me, Sarah. You betrayed me. You broke every promise we ever made to each other." Tears streamed down her face now, silent rivers carving paths through the blush and powder. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading, raw with desperation. "Michael, please, I'm so sorry. I messed up. I made a mistake. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I love you, Michael. I truly do." "Love me?" I scoffed, a hollow, mirthless sound. "Is this how you show love, Sarah? By creating a dating profile and sleeping with your boss?" I shook my head, the weight of her betrayal crushing me. "And speaking of your boss, David, I know about his wife, Sarah, Emily, and she knows about you two. I made sure of it." Her head snapped up, her eyes widening in renewed horror. The tears stopped, replaced by a look of utter devastation. You told her?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Sarah. I told her," I confirmed, my voice devoid of emotion. "She deserved to know the truth about the man she married, just like I deserved to know the truth about the woman I married." She broke down completely then, sobbing uncontrollably, her body racked with tremors. She begged, she pleaded. She tried to explain, to justify, to apologize. She reached out for me, but I recoiled, unable to bear her touch. Her words were a jumbled mess of regret and desperation, but they fell on deaf ears. The time for explanations and apologies had long passed. "It's over, Sarah," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. The words, though painful, felt like a release. "Our marriage is over. I want a divorce. I've already spoken to a lawyer, and he's preparing the paperwork." I walked over to the closet and pulled out a small pre-packed bag. It contained a few essentials: a change of clothes, her toothbrush, some toiletries. I placed it on the floor in front of her. "I need you to leave, Sarah. Tonight. You can stay with a friend or your parents. But you can't stay here." She stared at the bag, then at me, her face a mask of disbelief and despair. "Michael, please. Where will I go? This is my home." "It was our home," I corrected, my voice cold. "But you destroyed it. You walked away from it the moment you created that profile, the moment you betrayed my trust. You made your choices, Sarah, and now you have to live with the consequences. The profound sadness that washed over me was immense, a deep, aching void, but it was mixed with an unexpected sense of closure. The long, agonizing period of doubt, suspicion, and covert investigation was finally over. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. The deception had ended. The pain was still raw, a gaping wound in my soul. But beneath it, a tiny nascent spark of resolve began to glow. I had faced the monster, and I had survived. Now, it was time to pick up the pieces, to heal and to move forward, even if I didn't yet know how. The house, once filled with the echoes of our shared life, now felt eerily silent, yet strangely peaceful after Sarah's departure. The immediate aftermath was a blur of conflicting emotions. There was the profound ache of grief, the crushing weight of betrayal, and the lingering sting of anger, all swirling within me. But beneath it all, a nascent sense of liberation began to unfurl. The constant anxiety, the gnawing suspicion, the perpetual feeling of walking on eggshells, all of it had vanished with her. The air felt lighter, the silence less oppressive than the suffocating tension that had permeated every corner of our home for weeks. I spent the next few days in a haze, processing the seismic shift in my reality. I cleaned, not with a frantic energy, but with a quiet, almost meditative focus. Every item I touched, every space I tidied, seemed to shed a layer of the past, making room for something new. The divorce process, while emotionally draining, was surprisingly straightforward, largely thanks to Mark's expert guidance and the undeniable evidence I had meticulously collected. Sarah's initial attempts to fight, to negotiate, quickly crumbled under the weight of the dating profile in the photograph. She had no ground to stand on, no credible defense against the irrefutable truth. The legal proceedings moved with a swift, albeit painful, efficiency, dissolving our marriage with far less drama than I had anticipated. The financial settlement was fair, a clean break that allowed both of us to move forward, without lingering entanglements. Through mutual friends, the grapevine of our suburban community, whispers began to reach me about the fallout for Sarah and David. Rumors, fueled by the anonymous message I had sent to Emily and the subsequent confrontation, spread like wildfire through their company. Sarah, I learned, had been quietly let go from Innovate Marketing. The official reason cited was restructuring, but everyone knew the real story. Her career, which she had so eagerly chased, and for which she had sacrificed so much, lay in ruins. David's fate was equally grim. Emily, a woman scorned, had not taken the news lightly. Their marriage, once seemingly unshakable, was now in serious jeopardy, reportedly teetering on the brink of divorce. His professional reputation, too, had taken a significant hit as the scandal made its way through the industry. There was a grim satisfaction in knowing they were facing consequences, a sense of justice being served, but it was overshadowed by the lingering sadness of what had been lost, the collateral damage of their choices. The period that followed was a journey of slow, deliberate healing. I found solace in reconnecting with friends and family, those who had stood by me, offering unwavering support and a much-needed sense of normalcy. Dinners with Mark and his wife, long conversations with my sister, and weekend hikes with old college buddies became my anchors, reminding me of the genuine connections that still existed in my life. Their presence was a balm to my wounded spirit, a testament to the enduring power of true companionship. I started focusing on my own hobbies and interests again, things I had let slide during Sarah's all-consuming career ascent. I rediscovered my love for hiking, exploring new trails in the nearby Watchung Reservation. The fresh air and natural beauty a powerful antidote to the urban anxieties that had plagued me. Photography, a passion I had abandoned years ago, re-emerged as a therapeutic outlet. I spent hours capturing the play of light on leaves, the subtle textures of bark, the fleeting beauty of a sunrise. Each click of the shutter was a moment of focus, a small victory over the lingering shadows of the past. These activities weren't just distractions. They were intentional acts of self-reclamation, rebuilding my identity piece by piece. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I learned invaluable lessons about trust and self-worth. I had trusted blindly, perhaps even foolishly, allowing my love and admiration for Sarah to overshadow the subtle red flags that had appeared. I had dismissed my own feelings of neglect, attributing them to her ambition, when in reality they were cries from my intuition, warnings I had chosen to ignore. The experience taught me the critical importance of listening to my gut feelings, of honoring my own emotional needs, and of never compromising my self-respect for the sake of maintaining a relationship that was built on deceit. Trust, I now understood, was a fragile thing, easily shattered and incredibly difficult to rebuild. It had to be earned, constantly nurtured, and mutual. The process of rebuilding my life was slow, at times excruciatingly painful, but ultimately deeply rewarding. There were days when the loneliness was overwhelming, when the memories of what we once had threatened to consume me. But with each passing week, the sharp edges of grief began to soften, replaced by a quiet resilience. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with a renewed sense of hope. The experiences were varied, some awkward, some pleasant, but each one was a step forward, a reminder that life continued, that new connections were possible. I approached these new relationships with a newfound sense of caution and wisdom, no longer willing to overlook inconsistencies or compromise my own boundaries. I learned to communicate my needs more clearly, to identify red flags earlier, and to value authenticity above all else. I ended up selling the house in Maplewood, the place that held so many memories, both good and bad. It felt like a necessary step, a symbolic severing of ties to the past. I bought a smaller place, a cozy apartment in a vibrant part of town, a fresh start in a new environment. It was a space that felt truly mine, unburdened by the ghosts of a broken marriage. Looking towards the future, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The future was unwritten, filled with possibilities. I was open to new adventures, new relationships, and new chapters, but with a renewed sense of self-awareness and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. The pain of betrayal had been immense, a crucible that had tested my very spirit. But from that fire, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and ultimately, more at peace. I had found strength in vulnerability, wisdom in suffering, and a quiet, enduring happiness in the simple act of moving forward, one step at a time, towards a future built on truth and self-respect. My journey had been arduous, but I had navigated the storm, and I was finally ready to embrace the calm.